with a short thought on this week's parsha to get things rolling. In this week's parsha, we have one of the more difficult topics, and this is the topic of the misoininin, the complainers. The pasuk teaches us that Klal Yisrael started complaining. What's Klal Yisrael complaining about? Klal Yisrael is complaining that they want food, they want meat. Vayomu mi yachilenu basar. We would love a good steak. And this is such a difficult thing to understand. They just received the Torah. These are people that witnessed Kriyas Yamsuf. These are those that left Mitzrayim. And now, after sitting there and eating the food of God for so many days, the man, which we know, miraculous food, shows up at your front door. And all of a sudden, they have a craving for meat. And to cheapen this discussion and say, what do you mean? Meat has such a geschmack of food and it's so yummy, and man was maybe it had whatever taste you want, but the texture, it's a little bit silly, it's a little bit juvenile. And the question is, what's really going on over here? How can we understand how people who clearly were on the highest of levels witnessed Maimon Har Sinai, Kriyas Yamsuf, all the miracles, and they fell to a place of complaining? So, in reality, as many times we have questions on different stories in the Torah, the answer is never going to be 100%. We're going to bring out something that we could connect to. How to understand the depth of that they were complaining is very difficult. But a very simple idea which could begin to explain to us what was going on could be utilized by a very famous Rav Dessler, the Michtam Eliyahu. He explains a very famous ideology, and that is there are two categories of people in this world. We could take the entire world and we could break everyone into one of two categories. And this is givers versus takers. Similarly, this is active versus passive. Someone who's a taker, he is passive. Someone who's a giver is being active. And this simple difference, are you getting up and doing something, or are you sitting in your seat and just being complacent, listening, witnessing? This maybe is a little bit of an answer as to what happens with Klal Yisrael. Yes, they witnessed all the miracles in Egypt and Mitzrayim. Indeed, they walked through the Yam Suf and watched the water split. And they even were the people that stood at Har Sinai and heard the word of God. But all of these scenarios were passive actions. They were the bystander. They were the witness. They were not the active player. And when you're not actively doing something, when you're not rolling up your sleeves and sweating, not getting up and helping someone else, doing the talking, doing an active involvement, unfortunately, you could witness the grandest of things, the greatest ideas could go through our ears. But without active involvement, sometimes it doesn't fully change us as people. And therefore, we could have people on this incredible level, and yet it comes a day they wake up and say, hey, we want meat. Meat. You have them on. There could be people that the Medrash teaches us, they left Har Sinai, they walked away from the greatest revelation ever. And they ran away like a child leaving school. I understand. Shir is difficult, lectures are hard, but to run away from Maimon Har Sinai. So, of course, many different pshatim, but maybe this is part of what's going on. That yes, They witnessed everything. Their eyes saw, their ears heard, and at some level it seeped into their body, of course. But there wasn't active involvement. And that's why they were able to fall to this level of being the misoinen and the complainers. Now, whether this fully answers the question or not is not really the discussion. But what we could walk away and we could tell ourselves is we got to be givers and not takers. We have to be actively involved. And of course, because we know it's difficult, that just proves to us that we need to do it. Yes, it's difficult to make that phone call, to drop off that food, to help that person in need. It's much easier to sit there and to listen. And I'm learning, maybe even, and I'm listening, maybe even. It's true. But there's a time of active involvement. That active involvement in ruchnius and spirituality, that makes all the difference.